How many of you here have ever felt unsafe? Raise your hand. Yeah, it's like, it's part of life, right? Feeling unsafe is part of life. And so, what do we do then? Sometimes we go with, I feel unsafe, so it must be unsafe, and so I'm not going to do anything except stay protected. Sometimes we go and take a look and go, is it really unsafe? Because maybe my feelings aren't exactly right. Maybe the actuality of it is, it's way safer than I think it is, and I'm not going to know unless I go find out. If I stay in a place of I'm unsafe, then how do you know? How do you actually know if it's unsafe or not? Now, some things like standing in front of a moving bus are definitely unsafe. I wouldn't do that. But there's a lot of spots in the middle here where things get lost, where it's the uncertainty of it all can get us so uncomfortable that it feels unsafe. That's a real possibility, and then you never find out what the actuality of it is. If where you rest, where you hide, where you stay because this is where it feels okay, is in if I'm unsafe, I'm not moving forward here. And so I've been looking at that a lot this week and thinking about, well, what helps support folks to move forward in that unsafeness? What has supported me? Now, I'm kind of not the same as a lot of folks in terms of the only thing that got me to move forward when I feel unsafe, that still gets me to move forward when I feel unsafe, is I don't like that feeling, I want to know. I'm a want-to-know guy. So I move forward no matter how unsafe I feel. Not everybody, and I don't even recommend that for everybody, right? But I'm just saying, when you have a way of being that's so different from others, and that led me to thinking about cultures and culture differences, and how culture differences can create a feeling of unsafe that may or may not be true. Like, for instance, recently, I was talking to some kids who said that their dad doesn't, it's not okay to go burping at the table, right? And so they don't do it. Now, let's say those same kids then go to a Middle Eastern country where the proper procedure after a meal is to burp. That if you don't burp at that table, did you guys know this? That there are actually a Mideastern tradition in some countries that when you go there, if you don't burp after the meal, the person who made the meal, the host, is insulted. And so you go to somebody's house and you don't burp because you were brought up your whole life being told you don't burp at the table. And now it's unsafe to burp at the table because you don't know that this is the place you actually want to be doing it. How do you know? If you get stuck in your unsafeness, that's actually the spot where you want to burp. And I was thinking about how we get feeling so unsafe to admit when we're wrong. Or am I the only one? And so many of you know I've been exploring this unified field theory. Last week, I learned about how existence cannot be without relationships. And my wife and I, we have had an ongoing argument, Ash and I, for the past 10 years about boundaries. Her saying they're important and me saying they're not. that they're only temporarily important. And this has been an ongoing argument for us. And just early this week, I discovered in my search for the unified field theory that nothing can exist without a boundary. So I'm here to say, Ash, you were right. I was wrong. Now that could be scary to do that, right? On private, never mind on a stage. But if your culture is such where that kind of stuff is not a big deal, and it's not for me, that's actually pretty easy for me to do. Oh, I was wrong. Let's look at this. I see it that it could be another way, right? But not everybody feels safe in that particular arena, and so what do you do with that? Do you hide behind your feelings of unsafe? Because it's easy to do. When I was younger, I went to, I got to start out this story by just saying, I was born in New York City. My culture, my way of seeing the world, my interactive style is a tremendous, huge gulf between how I interact and Canada. The cultural divide is actually pretty large, right? And I'll tell you how large it is. When I was younger, I had an opportunity to go to Jerusalem. And I was told that if you go into to buy stuff, the markets, that's the word I'm looking for. The markets, you go into the markets, that none of the prices, that no one will respect you if you pay the price, the sticker price that's on there, that you need to haggle, you need to negotiate. So I'm like, okay. And I go into this store, and I saw this teapot that looked a lot more like Aladdin's lamp. And I thought, that's cool, I want that. I saw the price, and I go, how about I give you half this? Whatever it was. And the shopkeeper starts screaming at me. How dare you insult me like that? My wife and kids won't be able to eat if you make me pay, if you only pay that much. You are putting our family, we could become, hi, how are you today? We could become homeless because you pay that much. And he's yelling at me. And so I start yelling back. I'm like, oh my God, this is so much fun. And I'm yelling back at him. I'm going, how could you say that to me when I also have a wife and kids, which I didn't at the time. But, and they need tea because they're unhealthy, and you would deprive them of this tea. And we're going back and forth, and we're just yelling at each other and yelling at each other. And each time I'm raising how much I'll pay, and he's lowering how much he'll take. And we finally reach, I got about a 25% discount by the end. And he smiled at me and said, "You're really good at this." And I walked out of there thinking that was so much fun. Now, I want to know, I'm always saying, or am I the only one? I'm guessing I am the only one who would have found that fun, being yelled at like that. Okay, maybe there's a couple of you. But for the most part, what is fun for me is not always fun for others. And that distance is I've been looking at that this week, right? I've been really looking at that and going, so we talk about oneness. We use it as a word. But how do we actually work that into such cultural differences that are in the world? How do we work that kind of distance into how we can be together in a good way, right? So I had a conversation with somebody a while back that I walked away from that conversation going, wow, that was a great conversation. And the other person was traumatized. That really happened. And I didn't even know it at the time because I thought we just had this great, disagreement and we talked it out and we went through it. And in fact, at the end of the discussion, what came out of it was something new that nobody had ever thought of before. And I was like so excited about that. And the other person was like, that was the worst conversation. I can never talk to Cliff again because that was so traumatizing. And when I heard about that, it hurt my heart. It hurt my heart so much that is what came of that cultural difference. I wasn't even mad at that person. I mean, we were just having what I thought was a conversation, but the distance was that great. And so I started looking at my understanding of the gentleness needed by others. But you have to understand that when you start, and so this is how it relates to you guys, right? Understanding of what's so different for you is not an easy job. Because I can gain, anybody can gain such a barrel of evidence that the other person must change, must be different. That somehow how they're being is wrong. And I've done that. I've done that with some of you. I've thought, you guys are being not tough enough. Like, what's going on here? And that's been my mistake, right? And so what I also have been doing is looking at how to become gentler, and wanting to understand both sides of it. And so here's the thing about boundaries that I've also discovered this week. For a boundary to be alive, it must be permeable. This is a scientific fact. And so how does that relate to oneness? When we can let a little understanding go both ways. But when one barrier gets to a point where it says, no, you're the one that's got to change, not us, that is a dead relationship. Nothing can grow there. Permeability. We need to learn how to understand each other. I need to understand more about how you feel about stuff. And I'm letting you know, if you want to grow as a relationship, you need to understand how I see stuff. And I'm not just talking about between you and me. I'm talking about between anybody you meet who you're going, that person's too gruff. That person's too this. That person's too that. I can't relate to that person. They're so different from me. Where's the oneness? Where's the oneness? How do we find each other in the dark? Permeability, a way of opening, a way of relating that allows for understanding. I've heard it. Have you ever thought when you're talking to somebody else in terms of listening to what they're saying that they must have blind spots because they're not seeing this other piece? I've done that. I've used that phrase to people. They got blind spots. And I realized that the second I do that, I have stopped being curious. The second you think you understand another person, you have stopped being curious. And once you stop being curious, how do you grow that relationship? How is it even possible? And so I keep looking at the ways in which I do that. I say, they have blind spots, or this person has blind spots, or just this. It was last week. Last week, I was talking to ChatGTP about this, a friggin' machine. And that friggin' machine said, you may have insights, but just because you have insights doesn't make you the authority. I was like, oh man. And I felt it devastated me, and also enlightened me, and also lifted me up, all in the same moment. It's like, of course, that's how I've been doing this. I've been doing it like I got some sort of authority in terms of my insight, when it's just my insight. But we get stuck, right? We can get stuck in where we think we know, where we think we're sure about what's going on, when in fact it could be a million different things going on, and we've just closed ourselves off to it. And as soon as we do that, that boundary is no longer permeable, and so the relationship no longer exists. Because everything in life needs a relationship, and everything in life has a boundary. And so learning how to be permeable with that, learning how we can, make sure that we're doing our side of the understanding, instead of being so quick to point at that the other person isn't. That is where the tough job of oneness lives. If we're truly going to be in oneness, we have to be willing to look at, just because we feel unsafe doesn't make it so. Just because, and it might make it so, but if you haven't checked, how do you know? Just because you think things went well doesn't make it so. Just because you think things went badly doesn't make it so. Curiosity becomes such a strong key in spiritual development. And yet we have these times where we get our backs up and we say, it's got to be like this. This is what's got to happen next. And as soon as we do that, we have lost our curiosity. We have stopped listening to the other side, whoever the other side is, and relationship dies. Now, some of you know this. Maybe you've had more than one relationship and watched that relationship die. And think back on it. What really died there? Maybe it was your not stopping understanding each other. Stopping being willing to be curious. Making your unsafeness so important that you stop being curious about whether it's even real. Because that's what we do when we get uncomfortable, when things don't feel right. Our first action is to withdraw, pull inside ourselves. I do it. When actually there's this true relationship, sense of oneness, sense of being together that is so much larger than what I and most people I encounter can feel into, especially when we feel unsafe, especially when we feel unheard. Especially when we feel like there's danger, whether there really is or not. I hold a vision for myself of understanding. I hold a vision for this center of understanding, and for each of you. that what we can reach with each other is a new height of what's possible. But it's only possible if we're willing to go, okay, I know I feel unsafe here. Let me see what I can do to set up a container to take this step anyway. Because we are here to support each other. Just so I'm clear, I'm not up here saying, if you feel unsafe, take steps, march through your unsafeness anyway. That's my personal approach. I don't recommend it. But what I do recommend is saying, what kind of container can I set up for this specific thing I feel unsafe about so that maybe I can take another step into this uncomfortability? What step can I take here to have a conversation, a hard one, that maybe I couldn't have before? Maybe I feel way too unsafe to have. And yet, your growth depends upon it. And you have an entire community to work with to help you take those steps. That's what's possible. That's my vision. And then, as we learn more about how to be that way with each other, learn more about understanding each other, learn more about understanding cultural differences, understanding more about where the unsafe boundaries are that may have something that can grow there. When we learn more about that, that's something wonderful. That's my vision of something wonderful. My vision of something wonderful is when a conversation happens that was so difficult to have. And yet then it did happen and everybody lived. Everybody walked away going, okay, that wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be. Okay, I know I feel unsafe, but now that I've gone through it, wow, maybe I can apply this to another area of my life. I got this person at work, or I got this relative. Maybe I can set up a way to have a conversation with them that I've been not able to have. Something that's been gnawing at my heart, and yet not able to have that conversation. Imagine being possible doing that. Imagine the ability of being able to clean off your plate all those places that you've been so scared, that you've been holding on to, that maybe you've been talking to others about instead of who you're actually upset with. Imagine what it would feel like on the other side of that if that conversation worked and showed you in a good way. That's what's possible for all of us. And I highly recommend stepping into that kind of unsafe arena surrounded by your buds, your best buds. It's really okay to say, hey, this is scary for me, but I'm at a moment where I really want to step into what's scary for me. I could really use you holding my hand, walking with me into that. Because none of us have to do it alone. Not as if any of us are really alone anyway in this kind of universe. But I think you all know what I'm saying here. There are ways in which we all get to grow with each other out in the world, in the situations that are really hard for us, having those tough conversations. And we get to do it with the kind of support that would allow us to come away from it in a feeling like that worked. That's what I know for each and every one of us, all of us, including me. Understanding and a deeper sense of what's possible in loving each other. Thank you. I love you.